Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle and triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I'm speaking with an amazing woman named Arailyus Kingdom. Arailyus is a 3-time combat army vet. She has her MBA from Strayer University. Ooh, did I pronounce that right? The author of Love and Mental Health, which I'm super excited to hear about, and is the mother of 2 amazing sons. I am excited to have her here to share her story. Welcome, lady. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're both rocking the glasses today.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. Where are you calling in from, by the way? Where are you at right now?
I am in Warner Robins, Georgia.
Georgia. I love it. You're just above me. I'm hanging out in Florida today. So listen, I want to thank you for coming on and hanging out with me for a little bit today and taking some of your time to relax, share some of your story, and dive into all the awesome things that you're working on right now and that you have going on. So I'm super excited to hear about that. But the first question that I kind of want to start out with, just to kind of dive into the deep end, is, what's one of the greatest challenges that you've had in your life, and what did you learn from that challenge?
So, a lot of people won't admit this, but I'm very hard headed and I don't like to listen. And that's always been my biggest challenge. It still is my biggest challenge. But what I have learned about it is that if you bump your head enough times, eventually you'll get it right. And that's been my story. I bumped my head so many times. I think I'm finally at a point where I can start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
Definitely, 100%. Do you have a story in which your stubbornness got in the way?
You know, with my book, I started writing my book, right? And I'm so excited. I'm writing a book. God told me to write a book. I'm writing. It's coming so easily. So I wrote the beginning of the book and it was fine. But then I got into the journal portion of my book. And when I got into that portion of the book, all those emotions started coming back up because I had written all this when I went through it, but I had never gone back through and read it. So this was my first time rereading, like, oh my God, it really was that bad.
Wow.
And I stopped writing. I was like, no, this is too much, God. It's too deep. I don't want to do this. And I am a big Pastor Sarah Jakes Roberts fan. I absolutely love her. And I watched 4 of her sermons. And in every sermon, she was like, write the book, write the book, write the book. So I was like, okay,
Wow.
God, okay, let me write the book. So I started back. I wrote the book. I got to the end. I cried. I went through every emotion. Writing this book was very emotional for me.
Yeah.
But I made it through it. And that's me because I finally decided I'm going to listen to God. I'm not going to do what Arailyus want to do. I'm going to finally do what God want me to do. And we're going to see what happens.
I love it.
Yeah, and it's
What
been great.
what was the What were the emotions towards? What was in the journal that was so emotional?
So I'll tell you about the book. The book is a mental health love story. It's about a relationship that I was in where we both had mental disorders, but he was in denial about his, and he was also a narcissist. So it was that relationship was very emotional for me. And that's the part of the journal, the fact that, oh my God, like I went through this, like that was me at my lowest point. And the only salvation I found, anything that made me feel better at the time, was to write. So all I could do was write. And it's just when I got to the end of it, and saw that I made it out of it, I was just like, oh my God, maybe somebody else could learn from this story.
Yeah.
So by me telling my story, making myself vulnerable, hopefully somebody else will say, I can get through that too.
Definitely. 100. What was the worst part of that relationship?
Well, it's in the book or whatever, but I tried to commit suicide. So it was really deep. That relationship was very deep.
Yeah, 100. How old were you?
That was in 2020. So I was 39.
How'd you escape? What'd you do?
I took pills.
And what happened?
And I went to the hospital. Well, my cousin came and got me. They told me the story afterwards. My cousin came and got me, took me to the hospital. I woke up at the hospital, but I stayed in the hospital for about a week. And
Wow.
it's like as soon as I woke up, I was like, oh my God, Arailyus, you really fucked up this time. Like, but at the time when I did it, I was just in so much pain, like physical pain. My heart was broken. And I just didn't want to feel the pain anymore. I just wanted the pain to go away. And that's why I took the pills. But when I woke up, I realized, like, Arailyus, no, that was not the answer. Like, no. So now that I've gone through that, I went through that, but the relationship continued on even after that. So it was really deep.
Yeah.
Like, if I didn't write about it, you probably wouldn't believe the story.
Yeah. What's your you said you're dealing with mental health, mental illness? What are
Mm-hmm.
you what is your
My diagnosis,
diagnosis? Thank you.
I have bipolar 2, BPD, borderline personality disorder, and adult ADHD. Oh, and BPD, borderline personality disorder, the fun one.
Ah, love it. Love it. Are you actually diagnosed?
I've was diagnosed through the military.
Wow, really?
hmm
Did you actually go? Were you kind of like, there's something going on? Or did somebody say something?
I think. Oh, I'll tell you what happened. I was stressed. I was getting in trouble a lot, and I told my sergeant she was stressing me out, and she put me in a stress management course. And when I went to that course, I was introduced to the world of mental health. I knew nothing about mental health. Growing up, we didn't talk about mental health. We didn't know what mental illness, depression, anxiety. We didn't talk about any of those things growing up. So I was introduced to the world of mental illness and mental health through the military.
Wow. No kidding. What
hmm
did that feel like? That must have felt so good.
You know, the thing about it, believe it or not, Sabrina, I never thought anything was wrong with me. Believe it or not, I can tell you many crazy stories, but I still never thought anything was wrong with me. It wasn't until I started getting diagnoses, and then looking at the symptoms, and I was like, oh shoot, that is me. Oh, I do that. Oh, so there is something wrong with me. It's not just my personality, but it's the way that my mind functions. It doesn't function like a normal person's mind. But yeah, I did not think anything was wrong with me. But after getting diagnosed, and then the next step after getting diagnosed was to find a treatment plan. And that was with the medicine. And it took a while for them to find a medicine that worked for me. It took a few years, actually. But the medicine I take now, I've been on for about 2 years now, and it works for me. So we finally found medicine that works.
How did you wind up with the ADHD or whatever you had, whatever the diagnoses were that you said? How did you write a book?
If you read my book, you'll understand. My book gives you an inside look of my mind. My editor calls it organized chaos, because my mind is like I'll flip from one subject to another subject to another subject, all within the same paragraph. And my editor's job was to go in and make it all flow. But it was still my story. It was still my book. She didn't take out anything, but my editor, she worked with me, and we ended up with a book. We ended up with this beauty right here.
Oh, I love it.
This beauty. We came up with this.
Wow. Did she say something to you? Did you like prep her?
Yeah, we talked about it, what I wanted out of the project, and her whole thing was I was gonna tell the story. She said my job is to edit, but it's your story. You're the one that's gonna tell the story. And she just ensured that from the beginning to the end. And my editor was great at what she does, because she kept me on the schedule. She made sure we had everything done by a certain date, and we finished the project on time, just how she planned. My editor was a godsend.
I love it. Very, very cool. Looking back now at all of the stuff that you've been through between, what is it? Did you say military? Army?
Mm-hmm. I was in the Army.
Yes. And mental illness, the abuse, the book writing. It's been a whirlwind. There's been ups, there's been downs. What would you say is the number one lesson that you've learned?
I finally learned to trust God. Finally. And that's all I've been doing with this book. When God told me to write this book, I'll say I had certain plans for 2022, but God was like, no, Arailyus, those are not the plans. I have other plans for you. So we're just going on God's plan. So I'm trusting him, and every person that I need has been showing up, all these different opportunities that have been presented for me. Like, I know it's nobody but God, and it's just because I'm trusting him and being obedient and doing what he's telling me to do. So yes, my biggest lesson was to learn to finally trust God.
Very, very cool. How about your children?
What in what aspect?
Are they trusting God?
Me and my boys, we're very close, and I'm so grateful for that. And we talk about everything. We are a spiritual family, but because each one of my sons, I could say we're all probably going through something right now, but it's all our faith in God that we hold strong to. And that helps us get through every situation. And that's just something that I instilled in them from young children, because that was instilled in me. Like, I grew up in the church, and I brought that same thing to my boys. They grew up in the church too. So we all know about trusting God and believing in God and knowing that God will make a way for us.
Definitely. How old are your kids?
They are 19 and 20.
Ah, love it. Great
Yes.
ages. I have an 18-year-old boy.
Yes.
And then my fiance has a 17-year-old boy and 14-year-old girl.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fun.
Great. Motherhood is it's the best thing ever. Out of every job I've ever had, motherhood has been the absolute best. It's ups and downs. It's a roller coaster, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
100. Yeah, I totally agree with that. What does success mean to you?
Do you mean when will I consider myself successful, or just what is my definition of success?
What is your definition of success for yourself?
Making my passion my paycheck.
Oh, yes. I love that.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Tell us more.
Being able to financially sustain myself as an author and a content creator, that would be the ultimate dream for me. Because, everybody has their dream job. What do you want to be when you grow up? And out of everything that I've done up to this point, being an author is the absolute best job I've had so far. Like, it's just amazing that I was able to write a whole book that I was able to present to the world, and people can read what I wrote. And that's just so cool to me. Like, just, it's just something about that.
Definitely. Who's your book for, by the way?
My book is for everybody. My target audience is everyone that's been in love, because it is a love story. But it's the fact that when it comes to relationships, we don't like to think about mental illness. We just say that's just how that person is, or they get like that sometimes. When no, sometimes there really is a bigger issue. They are diagnosed with something, and maybe they need to talk to somebody. I don't know what it is about mental illness that people are so ashamed of. And I mean, I get it. Everybody is not like me. Everybody doesn't go and announce to the world, hey, I'm a crazy person. But it works for me. It's a part of my therapy. Like, I wrote a book about it. It's my life. But that's a choice I made. But other people, nothing's wrong with talking to a therapist. I feel like everybody could benefit from talking to a therapist, whether you have a mental disorder or not, because just talking to somebody else, getting a different perspective, and that could change your whole outlook. And you would never know, but it could be little things. Like, in my book, I put examples of things that happen. And I feel like if women and men read that book and be like, oh, my boyfriend used to do that, or my husband does that, or my girlfriend or my ex-girlfriend was like that, then we can start putting pieces together like, wait a minute. So maybe we do need to start having conversations about mental illness, because what I've learned, I know I'm not dating right. Well, I'm dating, but I don't have a boyfriend or anything. But when I do get a boyfriend, he has to be good for my mental health. Like, that's the number one thing. because writing with the guy that I wrote the book about was not good for my mental health. So I feel like in dating, talking about mental health is important, and it could be an icebreaker conversation that you have, because why do you want to date somebody and start getting feelings for them, and then your mental illness comes out or their mental illness come out, and now you're in a relationship with this person, you're like, oh my God, I don't really like this person, or things like that. Like, why does he do that? But you're in the relationship now, and you're not just gonna leave. But I feel like if you have these conversations from the beginning and periodically throughout the relationship talk about mental health and mental illness, that is gonna do wonders for a relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. How would you do it differently now? Is there more questions? How do you do that?
Definitely questions. And I've learned time. Take your time, Arailyus. I'm hard headed. I speed past everything. I go past go, and I'm in love. And I'm like, no, Arailyus, take your time. Take your time to get to know this person. See if you really think you want to be with this person. Do they have things that you don't like? Can you deal with those things that you don't like? So, yeah, that's where I am.
Good call. Definitely. 100. Is there any relationship advice in that book?
I started putting advice towards the end of the book because I was telling the story. And then at the very end of the book, I go back and I tell you my final thoughts on everything that I went through. So I tell you, okay, if I could do this all over again, of course, I wouldn't do this. I will probably never find myself in another relationship like this again. But this was my biggest lesson. I feel like this was my biggest life lesson. And that's why it's so near and dear to my heart.
That's awesome. Do you have any stories about something magnificent happened to you?
Hmm,
Besides the book. Obviously, the book is really good.
hmm, what could I think? Well, I vended last weekend, right? And I was in West Palm Beach, Florida, and I passed out my card to a lot of people, and I did a lot of networking, and people were asking me about doing speaking engagements and doing a book club. Like, I felt like that was just so awesome. It was like being at the right place at the right time. Like, that was just so exciting to me. So I'm looking forward to that.
I love that. Very cool.
Yeah,
Definitely.
because I don't have any plans with my business. Like, Arrays, where do you see your business a year from now? I'm just following the doors that God opens for me, because I feel like if I was trying to drive the ship, if I was trying to determine the next steps, I would probably mess it up. So I'm trusting God. I'm following God's plan. So when I see these opportunities, I realize that came from God. So yeah, that's
Very
what I'm
cool.
doing with this book.
Very, very cool. What do you wish for?
If I could have anything, I wish I could have one last conversation with my mom.
Oh, what happened to your mom?
She passed back in 2006. And it's just a lot of things now that I'm older. There are so many questions that I want to ask her. And, but I just keep saying, one day I'll be in heaven with her, and we'll be able to conversate all day long, and she'll be able to answer all my questions. But it's just funny that like I'm kind of like spitting image of my mom. Me and my mom were really, really close. And just over the weekend, I was at my aunt's house, and my cousin said to me, we were talking, and she was like, "Girl, you even move your mouth like your mom used to do." And that just made me smile on the inside, and I'm just like, am I really that much of my mom's twin? But I just love that I miss my mom every day. And oh, if I could just have one last conversation with her.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have a sister and a brother on both sides.
So you're a middle child?
On both. Well, the oldest, the youngest on my dad's side, and the middle on my mom's side.
Very cool. Do they have really awesome names like you do?
Well, my sister's name is Kedra, and my brother's name is Enya.
So not as cool as yours.
I guess not.
I love it. Very cool. Well, you told us a lot about your book, and you've told us that you don't quite know where you're wanting your business to go. You're unsure of that. But, like, what do you dream about?
Well, I'll put it like this. I'm a writer. I write every day, right? So I wrote the first book. And as you can see, this was a really thick book.
Yes.
It was a thick book. So some people like that, but this was a really long book. That was a long project. So what I want to do, because the story did not end, the story continued. I want to bring the story into my blog. So I want to write in my blog daily to tell the rest of the story. So I want to be a full-time blogger, content creator, and author. That's what I want. Those are the dreams that I want, but I just have to see what it is that God wants.
Yeah. What kind of content do you create? Are you fashion, makeup, cooking, wine? What do you do? Color?
I am lifestyle and mental health.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very
So
cool.
I try to show you can still live your best life even with mental disorders. Mental disorders don't stop you from doing anything. And I just like to shed a positive light on mental disorders on my channel.
That's awesome. Definitely. Where can people find you, by the way, on social media? Are you on Facebook, Insta? Where do you mainly hang out?
On Facebook, Arailyus Kingdom. On Instagram, Arailyus. On YouTube, Arailyus Kingdom. And my website, AureliusKingdom.com. You can purchase your book from my website. There is a link on the page.
I love it. Very, very cool. Does anyone else have your name?
I have heard it pronounced Arailyus, but it's not spelt like mine.
Got it. So are you like the only one? So if somebody puts in your name, you're the only one?
Yep. And normally it pops up Marcus Aurelius.
Because there's a Marcus out there.
Yeah, you know the gladiator guy? Well, the guy from Gladiators, his name was Marcus Aurelius. So when you type my name in Google, Marcus Aurelius pops up too. Like, do you mean Marcus Aurelius? No.
I love it.
Yeah, but hopefully, as my business continues to grow, when you type in my name, I do pop up in Google, thank God. But I'm just hoping that as my business grows, it'll pop up more easier and more people will be able to find me.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I love what you're doing. I love that you wrote a book. I think that is fantastic, and I really appreciate the fact that you pulled from your journal. I know that's one of the things that I think about often is, I did for a while. I haven't done it in probably, I don't even know, maybe 5 months. But every Monday for like months, I would read 60 minutes from my old journals in chronological order, starting from when I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really cool, same as you, like I had never read them before. So it's just like diving into the deep end and just the craziness, I think I got to age maybe 17 and then I kind of stopped because life, business, got busy. But I think that's so cool.
Writing is just, I'm just so used to it. It's a habit, but I love it. And it's just like when I'm traveling, I write. It does not matter if I had a good day or a bad day, I write. I just write every single day. And I love it. It's just the best thing ever to get, because I think another reason why I write is because of the bipolar disorder, because one of the symptoms of bipolar disorder is racing thoughts. So I get racing thoughts all the time. There's always something random running through my head. And a lot of the time it's nonsense and cartoons, majority of the time. But every now and then I'll get good ideas. But I think that writing is what helps me kind of funnel some of it out. So if I get some of it out of my head, then I'll be able to sleep that night. I won't be up all night with all these things running through my head.
Definitely.
So I don't know if it's like a coping mechanism too.
Definitely. Very cool. Well, I love what you're doing. Super, super proud of you. Is there any closing thoughts that you have before we close up here with everyone here listening?
Well, what I wanted for my book is I wanted my book to be a conversation starter. Because, like I said earlier, growing up, we didn't talk about mental illness. We just said, oh, that child is bad, and kept it moving. But I just feel like if we as a community would start taking things like mental illness more serious, because the earlier you get diagnosed, the better. So if we would start taking it a little more serious and get our kids diagnosed, we wouldn't be calling our kids bad and saying they just act out and maybe they just do all these things. But if they could start seeing somebody, a therapist or whatever, they could start getting treatment for the child, it'll make it easier for them growing up.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that had I had a therapist growing up, maybe a lot of the bad decisions that I made, I wouldn't have made, because I feel like I was just going off of whatever thought came across my mind. Oh, that sounds like a good idea. I'll do it. But I feel like had I had someone to say, Arailyus, sometimes you get thoughts and they're not good ideas. So maybe you shouldn't listen to every thought you get. Maybe if I had somebody telling me things like that, I wouldn't bump my head as much as I did. I don't know. It's not all about medicine. Not everybody with mental disorder has to be on medicine. Like, therapy can do a world of wonder. And I mean, there are alternative sources out there too for therapy, for treatment. So if we just start taking it a little more serious, start talking about it a little bit more, that's what I'm hoping with my book.
Yeah. When did you start seeing a therapist?
Oh, I got diagnosed when I was 30. So I've been seeing a therapist for 11 years now.
Wow. And there's a huge difference?
Yes.
Wow.
I still bump my head. I still make bad decisions, but therapy is good for me to get my thoughts out and to hear somebody say, well, Arailyus, let's dive deeper into that. Let me ask you some questions about that. But I just think therapy is just good for you. I think therapy is good for everybody.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Definitely. I think the stereotype that kind of goes along with it is kind of subsided now. People are a little more okay with saying that they're seeing one or knowing someone who sees one. It's not as scary as it used to be. I remember growing up, it was like a whole thing. If somebody was going to therapy, it was like, oh my God, she must be crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool as the times are changing, we're growing up and we're being more mature and we're learning how to take care of ourselves as humans.
Yes, and I'm happy to see that.
Yeah.
So I think with that part, the fact that it is becoming more acceptable, like that's why we have to reach out for these resources and stuff. You have to come out here.
Yeah, for sure. Why did you decide to write a book?
I wrote a book because God told me to. I was sitting in my office and God said, write the book. And I turned to my computer and I instantly started writing.
Wow.
I didn't question it. I said, okay.
Very cool. I love that. Well, I loved having you. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day. Anybody who is resonating with all the goodness that was shared here, make sure to check out Arailyus's website, social media, and all that goodness. She is active on Facebook and Insta, LinkedIn, and YouTube. That's right. Very cool. All right, lady. Well, thank you so much for those of you listening live. Thank you for being here. For those of you watching on the replay, make sure that you hashtag replay so that we can see where you are and we can send you some love. Thank you so much for joining us here on Her Version. This community is expanding every single day and is striving to do better than they did yesterday. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Do something awesome today.